everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Deborah Hughes, Assistant Director of Publicity and Publications at DAS, and I'll be your host along with the Head of DAS International, Annaberta Oles-Jayan. Thank you for attending today's webinar, where our specialist tutors will be sharing again on curriculum-based remediation. This is our part 2 of our webinar. If you have any questions for our presenters, please click on the question and answer icon at the bottom of the Zoom window and type in your questions there, or you can put it into the chat and we'll collect your questions and hope to provide answers at the end of this session or as we go along. So let's get started. I'd like to introduce you to our presenters again, who will be sharing with us today. All of our specialist teachers at DAS International hold qualifications in special education and have worked in the special education field for a significant time. So let me introduce you to our 3 senior specialist teachers with us today, Veena, Anupama, and Shilpa. Veena has worked with children from different countries and various international schools in Singapore, and she is familiar with the many aspects of the different curriculums. She has worked with children with various learning differences and helps them to be successful in the mainstream curriculum. Anupama facilitates learning with a holistic approach and passionately believes in the overall development of the child and helps them with their academic needs in a hands-on approach. She uses methods by which they learn best and adapts learning tasks to the child's ability and strengths. And Shilpa aims to understand the strengths, weaknesses, and learning styles of children to design individualized programs to help and motivate them to achieve their targets. She believes that it is important to build a strong rapport with students and create a conducive learning environment for the smooth delivery of knowledge. Also with us is Miss Annaberta Oles-Jayan, the head of DAS International. Anna has a wealth of experience in providing support for students with learning differences, and as head of DAS International, she aims to provide a professional service to the SPLD community, both in Singapore and in the region. Anna, over to you.
Hi everyone. Hello everyone, a warm welcome to all of you parents, teachers, and allied educators. Thank you so much for joining us. We hold the Spotlight series every month, and it's good to see regulars actually coming back. And along with my co-host, Deborah, who's our Assistant Director for Publicity and Publications, we bring you the DAS International 10th Anniversary Series. But today, by special request, we're presenting part 2 on how curriculum-based remediation can support your child. I think this is an interesting, like people want to know a bit more, you know. So the last one we did last month just was touching on various topics. This time we're trying to get a little bit deeper and have more of a discussion with our panelists today. So a continuation and expansion from our last discussion. And they will share further their experiences in providing curriculum remediation and the importance really in aiming why we have this program is to aim to bridge the between therapy and the school expectations. So this webinar, we've kind of broken up into 3 parts of discussion. The first one we'll talk about filling in the gaps to the students' learning through curriculum remediation. Then we go on to linking the therapy to curriculum remediation and how different are the two. Because parents send their kids for, you know, they have a child with SPLD and then, so they send, and what is all that about? What's the difference? We get a lot of questions on that. And then how do specialist teachers support the social emotional aspect of the child's learning? To us, that is really very, very critical, and we thought we'd also want to share. So let's plunge right in, and as we have a lot to cover within this time, let's start with the first point, which is filling in the gaps to the students' learning. You know, could be English, math. Veena, if I may ask, hi, if I may ask, you to start this discussion and to get your view first. When we talk about filling in the gaps to the students' learning, I think that is something which I think we cannot assume everybody understands what filling in the gaps to the students' learning is, so that everyone is on the same page when we are talking about this. If you could maybe just expand on what do we mean filling in the gaps? And secondly, if you could share with us from your experience on how we go about this. And the rest can join in.
Thank you, Anna. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being with us today. Filling in the gaps is I would say, a very, very important component in curriculum remediation, much so when the child is slightly older and starts remedial a little later in his or her educational journey. So the time when the child actually starts his or her remedial in relation to where his cohort is at the present moment, the learning cohort or his classroom is at that moment, becomes the most important aspects. It is quite relative. And so assessing this is the key point to plugging holes in curriculum remediation. This along with I would say, what is the main aim? Like the three stakeholders, the parents, the teachers in the school, or the curriculum expectation, where all these three expectations, what are they? With relevance to where the child is at that particular point. And then also the learning style of the child, like what kind of a learner he or she is. Is the child a visual learner? Is the child an auditory learner? Is a child a kinesthetic learner? Putting all these three together is where I think a specialist tutor can start plugging holes. So when you have all these three relevant details in your pocket, then you can start preparing a lesson based on the strengths of the child, because we are always looking at the emotional well-being of the child in trying to keep the child motivated through his or her lesson plans. So when this is happening, and also we have to see what the relevance of the topic is in the learning journey of the child. So sometimes in a particular topic, there would be a few points that the child needs to carry on to the next level in his or her educational journey. The rest of it might just be incidental. So we have to really zero in on what that particular aspect is in the child's educational journey, which carries him forward. So here is where all three, the classroom teacher, the parents' expectations, and the curriculum's expectations play a very important role. So we have to modify these expectations based on the child's ability to read or learn this particular topic. So for example, so this is basically how we start plugging holes. So the first thing is, where is the child in this particular, for example, we would have probably heard, oh, the child is in grade 3, but is functioning at grade 1 level. So what does this actually mean? This is the gap that we are talking about that needs to be plugged. And then how will we plug? Can we go back to the grade 1 level straight away when the child is already in grade 3? So we have to take something out of grade 3 and walk backwards. So that is what we mean when we say we take a leaf out of the curriculum. Yes, so for example, we are dealing with a comprehension passage. The child is not able to, the fluency of the reading of the child is not at a level where it kind of enhances comprehension of the passage. So what can a specialist tutor do at this point to keep the child's emotional well-being going on? So there could be shared reading. There could be a reading where the child can imitate the specialist tutor. And here we always assess the kind of learner the child is. For example, if the child is a visual learner, use tracking to help. When the specialist teacher is reading, use the tracking devices to see the child is following so that it helps in comprehension. If the child is an auditory learner, yes, you just let the child listen to how you're reading and track with his or her finger. So this kind of helps comprehension. And so at the end of this lesson, we are only testing comprehension. So if there are a few spelling mistakes in the way the child is responding to the questions in writing, it's okay. We just put this in our bank where we will come back to it at a later time, or at a time that is not more demanding for the child. So, but all this is kind of recorded in our journal or whatever, we keep a record there. So this is how we try to plug in gaps. So this is like moving forward and then jumping a little backward. This does not follow the regular scope and sequence that is normally recommended, because the child is already at an age where you can't go too much behind, because it will definitely be a disconnect and boredom. So that is what it is. And this particular kind of strategy will definitely need more than one lesson per week, because that is probably more advantageous, because there we can deal with the curriculum first and then expectation, and then use the same to teach the other skills like probably spellings, grammatical rules and stuff as part of editing. So the second session, we can use the same thing and look at the child and say, okay, these are the things that need to be addressed. So how do we go about doing that? And so that way the child feels very involved in the lesson, feels responsible for the learning also. The same thing applies for math. When we start a concept like addition, all the vocabulary that is involved, more or less, to teach word problems in math have to be addressed first, like add, altogether, together, sum of, total, all these things. So the child is already familiar with the vocabulary that is already there. One thing you can do about math word problems is that read, help the child understand, and connect it to some very real life situations. For example, you know the name of the child's best friend, you know the name of the child's siblings. So you can make a small story relating to one of them so that the child immediately gets engaged. And then use numbers that are simpler. No, we're not kind of diluting the concept. You're only making it simpler for the child to understand. Normally the children like twos, counting by twos, counting by fives, counting by tens. So use numbers that are easier for them to manipulate, and then teach the concept first, and then immediately relate it to the word problem and ask questions like, okay, so you did this here. So what is it saying here? And then that way we can help the child work the curriculum too. So I think my colleague Shilpa would like to would probably elaborate more about how she carries it on for middle school, high school, or even any of her children.
Hi,
over to you, Shilpa.
Thank you, Veena. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Yeah, it was actually Veena has, hi. Veena has covered almost everything, like, you know, what we need to like major part. But so I'll just speak about little senior students with whom we work, like high school students. Like sometimes at DAS, we do get referrals. Like just recently, I got someone Sec 3. So now when I started doing mathematics with the child, I had to look at where she stands. So what I do is give the basic work, what they are doing at school, as they are doing whatever curriculum topic they are approaching at the moment. And then I check where the child stands, where the student stands, what level it is. And then many a time we notice that there is definitely a gap, the word which basically we use, that filling in the gap. So now, only thing is we have to do it a little strategically, that we can't let the child straight away know that, oops, there is a big gap, because that pulls them down a bit emotionally sometimes. Oh, I can't remember that. So how am I going to do? So sometimes we just carry over, like we just go on, carry on, do that topic. So, you know, like it was a very funny question was asked to me. We started doing data analysis. And then the girl turned to me and she said, but isn't there analysis in literature? So what analysis is this now? Data analysis and literature in poetry and this. So, okay, so totally we took a kind of turn and we spoke about what we meant by analysis. And then, you know, of course, that's not a gap I would call, but basic doubts they can have in their minds, especially the older ones. And they're a little shy to ask and share those. So what happens is with specialist tutoring, when it's one-on-one, they know that they don't have to worry. If they come up with some question, they can have their doubts cleared with us. And the gaps, very simple example is going towards advanced math topic, and suddenly the student has realized, or rather I realize, or any tutor has realized that fractions are forgotten, which is learned from from grade 3 onwards, So again, so why it is forgotten? Probably because it's not used too much in between. There has been a gap, holidays have happened, whatever. So again, we carry on, but then as Veena said, we put it in the bank, then we take it out and work on that topic for sure, to make sure that it is like I call revisit, reinforce, and then recall, retain. You have to do that. Before that, you can't go forward to something very, advanced. And in literature and all, I'm working with 10th graders and IB students, and I noticed that they have so much writing to be done. Now we can't stick to only like gaps. Suppose there is a spelling issue. Yes, there is a phonological awareness problem, but what they need is their writing the language has to become more expressive, aesthetic, pragmatic, everything. It can't become a very plain writing. So we encourage that part. We kind of, give those strategies, how you can make your writing interesting. While doing that, you fill in the gaps. If you notice there is like pattern of, spelling mistake happening. So on the side, you say, okay, my dear, you can do that. Or aligning your writing, or how to say, like sometimes they just write anywhere, anyhow. They can go out of context. So the gaps can become very different as they grow. So those are to be just watched and filled in as much as possible. And I have to say that, yes, we have to make it possible to fill in those gaps, to give them that confidence. Anu, you can add something.
Yeah, thanks, Shilpa. Hello, everybody. One of the most, unnoticed part about filling in the gaps is also, taking them back and filling that big gap is also how to organize and structure your work. Often they have moved on to, classes, and then when they see a blank sheet of paper, especially as they go in higher grades, the blank sheet gets bigger and bigger. They need to fill in all of that. But how do you organize your workspace? So that is also something which we look into, when you see the child doing his work and it's all over the place. So first thing is, hey, hold on, let's get back to the straw line. This will be a working area. This is where you will write your, equation. This is where you'll write your number sentence, those very basics, which sometimes, in their quest to move on grades is ignored. That's one of the things. And another example I could add about, taking parts, what Veena said earlier, taking parts of your previous grades into a newer grade. For example, a child is being introduced by 6th grade into a topic called circles. And, getting introduced to vocabulary like radius and diameter. Interesting thing would be revisit things like double number facts or half or doubling, because we want to establish here that the diameter is double of the radius. So now if the child is not familiar with doubling numbers, or how do I move on to this? So we play a game to establish that. In an unknowing manner, the child is already familiar with this before we introduce this concept of radius and diameter. And similarly, as what Shilpa had added earlier about when kids are in higher grades and they need to write more elaborate and descriptive essays, take them back to things like synonyms, working on their vocabulary. What are other words you can use instead of beautiful? Working on those very basic and building on their vocabulary bank is something which we do, again, through games. There are so many sites we use also, so it's done it very subtly and in a very fun way that they have built on those skills and they can use it, apply it immediately. Thank you. Yeah. Over to you, Anna.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Wow. You three ladies have so much. we can really go on. Okay. Time is not on our side. Thank you so much for that. So we have discussed, on the various methods we can adopt in bridging the gap to where the student needs to be. We talked about curriculum, learning styles, the teaching methodology, the scaffolding that is in place. Now, moving on to our second point of discussion, then how do we link the therapy to curriculum remediation? Because the students we support are students with specific learning differences. These students all have a learning difference. It could be dyslexia, ADHD, could be vocabulary issues, pragmatic issues, many different sorts of SPLDs. So how do we then link, and how is that possible to link that? Shilpa, if you could start the second discussion on this point of linking therapy to curriculum. This is a big question. Parents often, when I ask them, they always ask me that question. How do we, what's that link? What we all do?
Yeah, Anna, thank you. Yeah, I think of therapy and curriculum. I think of it as we look at syllabus as we can use the syllabus or the curriculum as a roadmap. And I feel that therapy is, those are the rest stops on that road, while you're traveling, you're having that journey with the student, how you are trying to get them to reach that destination, to learn. Why therapy I call rest stops is because there are gaps, like we spoke before, and we need to link that therapy to that curriculum so that it moves forward. Now, what happens is we begin with psychological assessment report. That's always the first step, because we use it as a reference point where all the information is given, like learning needs and strengths and weaknesses, everything. After that, we collect the other background information from parents, from school teachers, and if there are any behavioral issues which have been, they have experienced or whatever. And then one more thing I always request parents is latest test score and a sample work, work sample from school. So that now tells me where the child stands. What is exactly not exactly one work sample is going to help us, but definitely that gives me a rough idea what's happening. So now, using all these points, we plan the IEP based on this curriculum. So when we talk about curriculum remediation, so it will not be only therapy. It will be, the curriculum will be used as a base of IEP to plan the short-term aims or long-term aims. Because, like I said, we need to work on that curriculum. So customizing the lesson according to the requirement. So customizing the lesson is fine, but how do I customize it? So that's where, again, I'm looking at the child psychological assessment report. He might have been diagnosed with weak phonological awareness, weak fluid reasoning skills. Now, depending on the grade which the child is studying in, that's where I start planning my lesson. Weak phonological awareness, yes, sure, the spelling is weak. We can go ahead with doing that. But because they are in school, because they have to face the school curriculum, which is the integral part of their educational journey, how we link it is we will go through the rule. So maybe spelling rule or syllabication is needed, but then we will connect it with editing worksheet or a closed passage where they have to look at the word or with the helping words, of course. So what happens is they look at the word. Initially, we tell them, yes, just copy it, how you look at it, right? But at the same time, and then we go through that again. Once it is done, we go through, we read it. So we see how the reading fluency has happened. Does the child remember the word? This is for younger students, but this also is applicable to secondary students as well. They have that. They have editing worksheets, which are editing assignments, which are more challenging, more difficult words. Another thing I noticed that fluid reasoning skills, logical reasoning, they have to use. Now, where they have to understand, they have to gathering data from visual things which are given. That's where we can use graphic stimulus activities. So, they could have been given just an advertisement, and where they have to read between the lines. they have to write the answers to those questions using that information. Everything is not given in detail. They have to look at that info, absorb it, and then they have to come up with answers. So here they need logical reasoning. Yes, there will be other basic therapy targets for fluid reasoning skills, which we will be doing some other, the pattern things and all, but this all goes and we connect it to graphic stimulus. That is one of the activities I'm mentioning. So the fluid reasoning also connects, we need it actually in problem solving. We all need that logical reasoning and fluid reasoning. We need problem solving. So in math, it has to be done. So it can be started with simple problem sums related to the curriculum topic at that moment, but we can take it forward to advanced level as per requirement. So I'll just give you an example what happens, how therapy has to come in. So I'm teaching this 7-year-old who has ADHD and he's diagnosed with dyslexia as well. And he's quite weak, he's 8. He's quite weak with basic 4 operations. So mom had requested me and I had planned a lesson to do the subtraction that day. But when we started the lesson, not before, actually before starting the lesson, mom sent me the worksheets, which they had done in school. And there was odd and even numbers. The child was completely at loss with it. So the lesson changed at last moment. And then he was so completely off that because he had not understood a single thing in school, what was going on with odd and even numbers, that he refused to do. So somewhere there, the therapy in the sense, what I mean here, I had to use color coding. I had to send a chart, because I'm doing online sessions. So I sent a chart to the mom. So the boy sat and cut out all those even numbers, odd numbers. So by the end of the lesson, we had done quite a bit. We used our whiteboard, we played a game, we did number shark. And then I sent some worksheets. Like that's how we keep connected to the parents, right? So I sent some work to his mom and I said, just see like if you can do the repetition. Just this morning, I got a message from her that I went through that and he could do even and odd numbers. He could sort them out without any help. So what happens is, basically what had happened, it was a normal math work, but he was completely at the bottom of his self-esteem unknowingly, because he's young, he doesn't understand that he's completely losing his confidence. So that helped doing that. And with word problems, we want to connect our word problems like, based on real world situation. So where we go through guiding questions, derive the answers from the student, basically, So that's where we use, in math, all you can do is most probably like therapy. Mostly, I think the therapy works with literacy work where, yes, you can go visit your spelling gaps and, working therapy. But with math, yes, the same thing, revisiting the old concepts or reintroducing something which has been learned but forgotten. That can only happen in a one-to-one situation where there is a flexibility, where we are flexible to do that. So therapy literally connects to the curriculum, depending on what topic is being taught in school. We go according to that. If the child wants to do something else or he needs help with some other topic and what we have planned, we just change it. So I think that's all we do when we connect the therapy. And most importantly, we are always in connect. We try to keep that connection with the teacher, with the parent, and we keep everybody in the loop and informed, well informed, so that, there is an involvement of parents. And when we give the progress report and when we have a meeting, I use IEP so that we kind of discuss the aims which we had planned and whether we have reached those, whatever to an extent. So that's how I feel the therapy. I always think that therapy and curriculum, it's like, it's literally taking them on a path to facilitate that learning. And whenever required, just stop and help with something else. Like what is that they need to learn and they need to feel confident. Yeah. Anu?
Thanks, Shilpa.
Yes, thank you.
I'd like to elaborate with one example as all what Shilpa said. So when we are looking at, developing a child's literacy, looking at literacy development, we want the child to be able to write more. Now, one part of writing more is to be able to generate ideas. Now, some children with, not weakened maybe cognitive development or processing skills. Now, I have also used something like the 6 thinking hats, and you may be wondering what is 6 thinking hats to do with curriculum, but it really does help. Now, we look at anything, any object also, start with something as simple objects and use your 6 thinking hats and say what, and teach the child to look at things in different perspectives. What are the positives, the negatives, what can we do else with this? Maybe I took a pen and look at the positives, negatives, what else can I do with a pen, and get the child to generate ideas. Now that is also part as how we are using therapy in developing the child's academic needs and fulfilling that as well. That's some example I could have added. Over to you, Veena, if you would like to add something more.
Thank you, Anu. Shilpa and Anu have given so many of these therapies that can be linked to how curriculum can be bridged with the therapy. The most common one that would probably will be a go-to one will be usually breaking whatever component that we are dealing with for a child into smaller doable parts. For example, when a child has to do something about, say, planets, usually it is a science-based assignments that are being given by the school that kind of throws them off balance, because they can do a lot of research. They can look at the internet and try to get more details, or they might know themselves a lot of things about what's all about planets and the universe, which is a very, very interesting topic, especially for boys. I mean, not being very this thing, but the boys tend to take off on planets, just like that. And so the thing is, when something like that happens, we have to direct them to become more coherent in their presentation, that is breaking it into smaller parts. For example, sit with them, look at the same website that they are looking, and then try to sift. So, okay, you read this, or I'm reading it for them because we need to do it quickly. And then say, what is the most important point that you picked out from this? Write it down. So these kind of things help them to do research, which is one of the integral parts of curriculum work, because a lot of assignments are based on research. So learning how to sift information, also how to break down everything into doable parts. These things I find are quite useful therapy that can be incorporated into breaking down curriculum tasks. Another thing with ADHD children, I have noticed that work really well is that get them to do different activities, but all of them are connected to the same topic.
Yes.
Without knowing what they're doing. For example, they're learning spellings, then use Play-Doh to model the spellings, or if a child is having difficulty with writing, give him that slime to keep on working on, so that, his attention is on what is being taught. At the same time, there is hand-eye coordination, finger dexterity that is happening, which helps him to write. And he's also, slime is something that kids love. So, you give them, there are so many versions of them, glitter slime, this slime, that slime. They will just jump at it so, and I sometimes reward techniques also help. So at the end of you do this, then you can accomplish something else, like read a book or flip through pictures or something like that. That also is part of the therapy that motivates a child to work. So these are some of the things that kind of I use, or all of us, I think we use in at some part of our work.
True.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Wow, okay. We've got another 20 minutes, but all very, 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 very interesting. And we've got some really nice feedbacks. Thank you, attendees, for your positive comments, that the session is informative. That's our main aim here, is to share, some insights into how you all are approaching and fitting in with the curriculum. So we move on to our next discussion point, which is how do specialist teachers support the social emotional aspect of the child's learning? This is an area that is very close to our hearts. And as an educational therapist, when I was teaching, that is just like the first thing that you connect with when the child is presented to you. The very first lesson, you're already feeling what's going on, what's the feeling, the motivation, that kind of emotion comes across immediately. So very close to our hearts. And so the social emotional aspects of a child's learning, of our children, your students, can maybe Anu, can you just share with us first your work as a specialist teacher? Could you share more on this, on the social, emotional, motivational? They're all linked.
Thank you, Anna. First, I would like to establish about, when students come to us for, sessions and all, and they all are coming with their academic needs, and everyone is looking at this as IQ development. So I would like to establish that IQ development is not the sole predictor of success, of a child's success. And we are all very, very aware that IQ along with EQ are responsible for a child's success in future life, right? And so what is EQ? EQ, as what we look at, is emotional and social skills or competence. We can call it whatever. And they include skills such as self-management, self-awareness, relationship skills, social awareness, and also responsible decision-making. Now, when a child is coming for sessions to us, so what is the secret portion? What is a secret portion that we can include in our lessons? And that secret portion is to cultivate a nurture enriched learning environment. And with that, I want you all to all remember this, a nurture enriched learning environment. Okay.
I can feel that.
Yeah. So why? And I can already feel your question. Why this nurture enriched, you're wondering. So, kids today, why kids, all of us actually, and especially kids today, are worn out, absolutely worn out. They have this digital overload. They have the academic demands. And we all have, this cognitive overload theory is gaining a lot of popularity. And let's not, shy away from all these factors which is influencing their learning journey. Now, what happens with SPLD learners? They are going through all of this along as the same as their peers, but they have something more added. They have this catching up to do. They have this filling in the gap. They are spending much more time focusing on something which is challenging for them. That means they're coming for tutoring, they're going for therapy, and all of this. So along with all these stresses which children nowadays face, they are also overloaded. So how does all of this play out? What are these signs and symptoms? Before we look at how we address it, let's understand some of these symptoms. So one is, of course, and which all of us do observe, is lowered self-esteem. Another is increased anxiety, sometimes sadness, irritability. Physical symptoms also is observed, like such as headaches, stomach aches. Another one is, of course, very reduced motivation. I will elaborate a little bit more on motivation and a little later. And another factor which is observed is acting out. Now, stress and anxiety and worrying is very, very obvious when a child is able, you can see it in the child may even speak about it. But what about this acting out? It's a very misunderstood symptoms when kids act out. And it is normally termed as a behavioral issue. But what is underlying this behavioral issue is that child signaling, I can't understand this, or I can't cope up with this. This is too much overload. Sometimes children rather be seen as bad or naughty rather than be seen as dumb. So they will act out, they will play it out, they will, divert the attention from their inability to through their behavior. So this is often misunderstood. So that is something which we need to also look and address. Now, to promote this emotional wellness in our therapy or in our lessons needs very purposeful attention. Okay, and how do we achieve this purposeful attention? Now, when a child walks into class, okay, we start with observation. Now, just as the child is walking in, we are observing his body language. He may come and just slump himself on the table, or he comes in walking, pulling his leg, dragging his feet. And that is already signals to us this child is not feeling very motivated today, or there's something running on in his mind. The children come from school, sometimes direct to our centers, and then their mind is like something like a snow globe, you can say, shaken up with what has happened up in class, extra work, or all what they've learned, math, literacy, science. This friend told me this, and I didn't get chosen for this, all of that running. And is that child going to learn? If I'm going to start with the lesson and say, hey, okay, come on, I've prepared this, we are going to start with our topic right away, will that child learn? Obviously not. I need to create that conducive. I need to greet that child with a smile. He needs to feel that warmth. He needs to feel welcome and safe. Firstly, safe. He may want to say a few things, and let him do that. We let him do that. They need to, also unload. We all talk about this unloading today as adults. Even the kids need to unload. Oh, I didn't have a very good day at school. Okay, let me hear it out. Let me spend a few minutes of that precious time hearing him out. Once that is done, I can slowly establish learning targets for the day. But if that mind is burdened with all what he wants, what's going on, he probably may not want to. Sometimes we'll also, introduce simple mindfulness techniques, like sometimes just deep breathing, because the child is too anxious. Okay, let's step back. Child may even find it funny, but they do along. And after a few minutes, they are calmed. They are calm. I use this very imaginative technique, which works pretty well with many of the kids I'm working with, is blow a balloon. So they close their eyes and they imagine to be blowing a balloon. And I said, in that balloon, fill it up with, all the things you didn't like. Maybe he doesn't want to tell me all what he didn't like today about today's day, but he is putting it in that balloon, and then they put one thing and after the other thing, all the anxiety and the stress, and they're supposed to put it all in that balloon, tie it up and let it fly away. And those 2 or 3 minutes, they're calmed down, they're ready to learn. And, this is how we are creating that, that nurturing environment. A few of the techniques. Sometimes we even may use things like games. Some children need to de-stress from all the learning and just play a little game to divert their attention, a quick game. And all these games which we use are educational games. They do have a learning motive and objective behind it, but it's just gamified and it's fun. And sometimes we purposely lose and the child feels very happy. Something simple as knots and crosses on the board, and I will pretend to lose, and the child will, I will need to teach you this, Miss Anu. I said, yes, you need to teach me. And the child had forgotten what he was bothered about, So just these simple techniques. And one thing important to keep in mind is that when the child comes to us for, tutoring or therapy or whatever we would like to call it, it's a long journey we have with the child. To establish that relationship needs working on, needs nurturing, and it happens step by step. It doesn't happen at an instant. It's a long journey, and we all work very hard to establish that, where they feel safe, they feel they are learning, and they feel motivated. And that is what I'd like to stress on, that motivation factor, to celebrate every success, where the child feels, oh, I have done something. Very recently, I was with a child, and we have been working on his writing skills and literacy, and he wrote something, and I said, wow, that's wonderful. I really enjoy writing your work. saying, oh, really? I said, well, how come you don't do this more often? I'm so shy. I don't like to share with others. So he's holding back his talent and covering it up with different, aspects. And so just that motivation from us is helping them step up their confidence and be able to achieve their academic goals. Yeah, of course, there's lots to share on this topic, and I would like to invite my colleague, Veena, to elaborate more. Thank you.
Thank you, Anu. I love the word nurture that you used. It is, I think it kind of sums up the emotional quotient that we are trying to develop in our one-on-one sessions when we do our remediation, because we definitely have to nurture a relationship where there is total confidence. There is this thing that is relationship that's building based on confidence between the child and the tutor. I mean, there are so many ways that we work on this particular aspect, and this is the one that actually enhances effective learning at the end of the day. And some, like you said, I remember goofing around with a child because the child would always come to class, and by the time I would say bye to the mom and say, okay, I'm going in, he would have disappeared. I wouldn't know where the child is, and he would find the most impossible gaps between a cupboard and the table and those kind of places to hide himself. And it became a game of hide and seek for me. And then I used to try to look for him and all that, fine, in the first few days. Then I would just go back to classroom and start writing on the board and start talking as though I'm talking to somebody in the class. And from some gap somewhere under the table or from somewhere, I would hear answers, and it became a fun game for us to kind of break the ice or break the tension, break whatever he was feeling that made him go and hide under the table or behind a cupboard or something, and slowly he would come out and sit and then start being more willing to take part in the lesson. Then this became such a standard procedure. So we used to be hopping around the classroom. He was an ADHD child, and it really helped him, to blow off that extra steam that he had and then settle down. There was another child who would need that counting 1 to 10, like putting her head down on the table and counting 1 to 10 to kind of get back or re-energize. So these are some of the things that we let them do, or, be free enough to do in the class and not kind of say, don't do this now, this is the time to follow this, we are doing this. No, and there was a child who very happily taught me how to do floss dance, because we were doing floss rule and and very happily, we were doing floss dance and learning. And that was the most effective lesson I would ever say, that we had. And I love doing it. I didn't know many of the movements. So it was nice to do that with the child. And it was a happy corner for all of us. And talking about happy corners, I do have a corner in my classroom, which is filled with not only goodies eatable, but also anything that the child would love to play. These could be any kind of manipulatives that the child enjoys. Each child has a different pet thing that they like to play with, and, so this one I use sometimes to motivate. Sometimes the child is deflated as he or she enters the classroom. So I say, okay, go to that corner, pick up 3 things that you would like to do in between your lessons, after every 15 minutes of our lesson. So they'll pick up 3. This kind of adds to the ownership of the whole learning process for that particular day, and the responsibility of the child to finish or learn a task. So after every 15 minutes, right on target, hey, it's 15 minutes. Can I use my reward? So give them about 2-3 minutes to play. And, I'll say I'm going to time this gap. So it will be some 3 minutes. And then there'll be a timer buzz ringing. Immediately, the child will put back and come back to the lesson. So this is something that I have used very effectively for my keeping the child motivated and emotionally sound during the lessons. And of course, goodies like Oreo cookies are the favorite. They love it, but that definitely I have to get parent permission before I dole it out very generously. I have to ask whether the child is having any particular allergies or okay to give them some snack. And then only those will be reserved for children who I can give. Otherwise, that will be removed from that corner before the child comes for the lesson. So this is how I use some of the
We're
techniques.
nearly okay, Anna. We're 5 minutes
I
over,
got it.
Anna. So
Yeah, I think Shilpa wants to
Yeah.
add a little bit.
I know.
Yeah, Shilpa,
Do we have
Okay.
time?
you have time? Just a few.
Well,
I
you
have
know.
no, this is, I'm not going to talk about a young student, but a 18-year-old who used to do English with me, and he had issues. He had psychological problems. So like you said, Veena, that the younger ones, like, you know, the ADHD students, they'll sit under the table or jump around. We were doing such serious English for IB, and he would tell me, I'm going to stand up, look at the wall and talk. Now I'm sitting at a different wall at my table with the laptop on, and he would say that. So first, initially I asked him, why is that you want to look at the wall? Because I don't feel like looking at anyone at the moment. I said, I can understand you wouldn't want to look at old lady, but that's fine. I accepted that. So I said, fine, go ahead. And he would stare at the wall and speak. Okay. And it used to look quite funny. I used to find it quite funny, but I would just sit there calmly, and we were doing Macbeth, mind you. The whole situation became a little funny that we are studying Macbeth. Teacher is sitting here with the laptop open, student is facing the wall and talking. But you know what? If that worked, fine, let it be.
Yeah.
Because he really had serious issues. He used to self-injure. He used to inflict self-injuries. Yeah. There were quite a few issues that I had, and fortunately enough, like we said, right, we warm up. That rapport has to develop. So he had started sharing what was wouldn't talk much, but once in a while something would come out. What was bothering him? How the peer pressure was happening. Obviously, there were issues, in school. And then he was extremely interested in dance forms. So at the end of the lesson, the activity would be like, okay, Macbeth would go in the happy, sad corner, rather, I would ask. Mr. Macbeth would enter there. And we would be watching Italian theater and his own dance videos. But that somewhere like, okay, it used to bother me sometimes that, oh my God, IB is around the corner. Doesn't he have to prepare? But if I didn't give him that leeway, or if I didn't give him that space and that emotional security, that moment, I knew we wouldn't go anywhere. The work will not happen. So what, like just now Anu also said that, mindfulness in everything, I think we have to learn. We learn a lot of things with our children, that how we have to get them interested and make their EQ stronger, more than anything. And we have to keep on reassuring them that that's fine. What you are doing is fine. It's fine if you want to look at the wall. It's fine if you just want to talk to me, turning your back to me. But as long as you can absorb what you are learning, as long as you are ready to write that essay after doing all this, we are fine with that. And I think this will not happen I have to say this will not happen with any other tuitions, because we are doing that. We are trained to be more, warm towards so our students open up. Yes. And I think that's one of the most important things the children should do, emotionally, to be strong. Thank you, Anna.
So if we could just ask for your feedback, I'd appreciate it. We always like to know whether these sessions have met your needs or are engaging. So we would appreciate if you could provide us with some feedback.
We do value your feedback, as Deborah has mentioned. And if you have any other suggestions on other webinars, topics that we could, we're always looking out for good topics that we aim to support the community. And so do let us know in the feedback as well. So I thank everyone for your time today, your lunchtime. Have you all been eating whilst listening? I hope so. And we've not taken away too much of your lunch hour. And I really sincerely hope through our sharing, I'd like to thank Anupama, Deborah, Veena, Shilpa, all the nuggets that have been shared today, and that we have managed to showcase a little bit the different approach that we take to students with specific learning differences. All centers, I think, supporting students have their own rationale, aims, objectives. So we were just sharing how we support students with specific learning differences. Yeah, so.
And I think there was one last question there about, what specifics do your tutors, DAS International specialists look after? And like, we basically look after everything.
Yeah, everything.
We look
from
at the
kindergarten,
student
from cradle
yeah,
to
kindergarten
right
all the way
now,
to adults.
all the way, we're supporting a 40-year-old right now. Yeah, and we're teaching him how to read, write, and spell.
Wow.
And he's just been diagnosed with dyslexia. So long, we have the training, the background, the support the Dyslexia Association provides for all our teachers is incredible. The training behind DAS International specialist teachers have all been trained by DAS Academy. A lot of our students have been assessed by the DAS psychologists as well. So, and then we kind of talk to each other and interact and see how we can help one another. Our speech and language therapists are very, very important. We consult. So it's like an interdisciplinary. We are lucky we have a big team behind all of us. So.
And as you can tell, they're very passionate about what they do. So if you feel that you need support, these ladies and all the other specialist tutors that work with DAS International would be here to help you. All you need to do is ask.
Just contact me anytime. Yeah.
Yes, so we hope to have another webinar next month. We're working on it, and so we will let you know. Because you've attended this one, we'll let you know what we're doing in the future. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Wishing everyone a safe space for you and your family. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all. Thank you, Deb.
Thank you so much, Deborah. Thank you, Anna.